Good afternoon, members of the news media and the listening audience. I'm pleased to be here today to outline some of the initiatives for the Ministry of Public Works, as mentioned in the throne speech. As you may be aware, the Ministry is responsible for sustaining Bermuda's critical resources, including roads, water supplies, parks, public lands, for Quangos, the municipalities, and services such as sewage and wastewater. The government recognizes that much of the critical infrastructure on which the public relies requires upgrading or repairs following years of decay and dereliction. And yes, carrying out these vital upgrades will require serious determination, substantial financial investment, and commitment on the part of government. It's a commitment this government has undertaken so that Bermuda can maintain its footing as a modern country. The throne speech mentioned the need to continue to prioritize the improvement of Bermuda's infrastructure. The government will continue with its plan to provide significant infrastructure improvements, including an objective over the next few years to scrutinize the island's waste requirements. This initiative for the Tynes Bay Waste-to-Energy facility will see the government invest $22 million over the next few years to shore up the depot's most essential systems. This investment forms part of a larger refurbishment of the facility to extend its useful life by another 25 years. In keeping with our waste and water needs, the first phase of the Water and Sewage Infrastructure Master Plan, being carried out in St. George's and Southside St. David's, will be completed by March 2023. This phase will establish completely new systems and processes for the treatment of sewage and the production and delivery of water. In addition to new piping, it includes a new reverse osmosis and sewage treatment plants. You may have heard about the ministry's recently concluded public consultation on opportunities to improve our water and sewage sectors. The objective of the consultation was to inform the public on the status and goals of the projects and identify perceived risks by the general public on provision and regulation of water and wastewater services. The consultation period ended on October 28, 2022, and included workshops with key stakeholders, a post on the Bermuda Citizens Forum, a Facebook Live event, a radio interview, and other outreach channels. The consultant is currently reviewing and analyzing the comments and feedback received from the general public. The results of the consultation process will be input for the recommendation. The consultant is working on 3 reports on regulatory authority structure, water quality standards, and wastewater quality standards. These reports will inform the second round of consultations expected to begin the first week of December 2022. If the sector remains unchanged, there is a risk of adverse public health and environmental outcomes, higher costs for Bermudian households and businesses, and impacts on the country's reputation as a premier vacation destination. Another primary strategy on our legislative agenda will be to carry out with work to merge government quangos, where possible, in an overarching effort to bring down the operational costs of the public service. One example is the unification of the Bermuda Land Development Company and the West End Development Corporation. Our efforts show the sensitivity of this government towards the need to drive down such costs while maintaining a high degree of effectiveness at the same time. This decision was made following an extensive review of the 3 housing-related quangos, the Bermuda Land Development Company, the Bermuda Housing Corporation, and the West End Development Corporation. A roadmap has been designed to set out the tasks that need to be completed to make the transition a smooth one, with a target date of December 31st, 2023. During this legislative session, the public can expect legislation to this extent, ensuring that we can do more with less while providing an excellent quality-price ratio. The challenge of delivering public sector services at a reasonable cost is faced by governments worldwide and is not unique to Bermuda. Another initiative on the government's legislative agenda that I'm proud to highlight today is the safeguarding of access to affordable housing, something fundamental to the ministry. We are acutely aware of the diminishing stock of affordable housing in this country, along with the implication and reduced opportunities for everyday Bermudians to rent homes that fit their budget. As I've stated before, concentrated action on this subject is vital considering the high cost of living on the island, which ranks among the world's top tier in terms of cost of living. The government doesn't believe it is reasonable nor sustainable to expect families to pay some of the rents currently being sought on the rental market. The people have rightfully turned to the government for assistance, and we are delivering. In this regard, the Bermuda Housing Corporation, the BHC, will push on with its renovation of 137 BHC older housing units over the next 3.5 years. While 60 of these units are currently occupied, the remaining 77 are not in use and will be brought online as new rental homes once the project is completed. This project will take the total number of rental units under the BHC's remit to 777. This work will bring back online every unit that the Bermuda Housing Corporation has in its inventory. But this is not the only thing we are doing to increase the number of rental units available. Additionally, the 77 new units will be subject to the Rent Geared to Income, RGI program, where a quarter of the household income forms the rent, plus a mandatory 10% savings to provide families with the means to graduate to home ownership or the private sector. I want to take the opportunity to speak today directly to landlords who are declining to rent their units for a variety of reasons and bring awareness to one of the BHC's programs in which the corporation will manage a landlord's rental properties for them. This program helps to increase the supply of affordable rental units to the public while serving as a great tool and resource for homeowners looking for the stability of having a long-term tenant without the hassle of rent collection and property supervision. These are responsibilities the BHC undertakes on behalf of the landlord. The key here, though, is the BHC will not pay market rates, but reasonable rates as we assume the responsibility for rentals. Therefore, I encourage homeowners to look at this program, which includes the possibility of the BHC refurbishing the rental home at no upfront cost to the homeowner. This arrangement is subject to an agreement that the BHC manages and rents the property to its tenants for a specified period of time until the repair costs have been recouped. The key message from the Ministry of Public Works legislative agenda is that the ministry is listening and is taking action to meet the critical needs of our population. We are committed to delivering on our responsibilities. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm pleased to join my colleague, the Minister of Public Works, the Honorable Colonel David Burch, to highlight the Ministry of Youth, Culture and Sports 2022-23 Throne Speech Initiatives. As this is considered to be my first press briefing as Minister, I'm pleased that at this occasion is to discuss our ministry's 2022-23 legislative plans. Since my appointment, I've spent the last few weeks visiting with members of our national sports governing bodies and attending various community events celebrating our local athletes and creatives. On each of these occasions, I have reaffirmed that the Ministry of Youth, Culture and Sports are dedicated to supporting and uplifting our creatives, artistic, and sports communities. As we enter a new legislative year, I think it's important to take a look back at the accomplishments from 21-22 Throne Speech. This past year, I'm pleased to note that we were able to complete two key throne speech initiatives: the creation and implementation of the National Youth Policy and the creation and implementation of the National Sports Policy. I should also note that since their launch, we have been extremely encouraged by the feedback and engagement received from our stakeholders regarding both these key policies. These policies are active multi-year strategies, and in the months and years ahead, we will continue working towards achieving the key goals that were set out in these plans. Turning to this year's throne speech, we intend to advance legislation to codify the nomination process and qualifying criteria for the selection of Bermuda's national heroes. Those recognized through this designation must have given exceptional service, and their lives must have left an indelible imprint on the Bermudian society. The designation of a national hero is a rare honor that is intended to be made all the more distinct by the judiciousness of this selection. Dame Lois Brown Evans was inducted as Bermuda's first national hero in 2009, and an additional 7 heroes have been inducted since that time, with Sir John Swan being the most recently inducted hero in 2016. We announced earlier this year that the nominations for new national heroes will only take place once every 10 years, during the same consistent window of time. Beginning in 2024, nominations will open for a 6-week window, beginning in October with the naming of the Recognition Committee, provided recommendations to Cabinet by January of 2025. Although nominations are to be open once every 10 years, this is not to imply that a new hero must always be accepted once every 10 years. In some instances, it is expected that no new national hero will be accepted. The benefits of establishing these clear set of guidelines to the public for nominations include helping to emphasize the exceptional nature of the national heroes designation, managing public expectations around the nomination and selection process, and helping to ensure that the selection of a national hero is driven by the established criteria and attributes rather than influenced by any particular set of current events that may not stand this test of time. Since joining the ministry a few weeks ago, I've been incredibly impressed and heartened by the passion and enthusiasm of this team, both in the Department of Culture and the Department of Youth, Sport, and Recreation. They all have love for our community, our youth, our arts, and our sports. And they are committed to ensuring the preservation of our culture, heritage, and traditions. It is a vibrant ministry in which it is the heartbeat of Bermuda, and we have much to be proud of. I am humbled to be a part of this team, and I look forward to pressing forward with our legislative plans for the upcoming year. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Darrell and Minister Burch. At this time, we're going to invite the news media to put questions to the ministers, starting with Minister Darrell. At this time, I'm going to invite Earl Baisden from Island Stats to lead us off.
Good afternoon, Mr. Darrell. You said you've met with and been encouraged by the national sports governing bodies. Mm-hmm. Recently, 2 votes were taken because right now we have a handful of national sports governing bodies who are recognized by the ministry, mm-hmm. and several that are not. But in 2 instances, we had the non-compliant looking to vote and take over. What's your take on that?
Well, Mr. Baisden, you would know that I did leave the meeting. I was there for the awards, mm-hmm. for volunteers that have helped these national sports governing bodies. And that was the meeting that I attended, and I was quite pleased to give awards and present awards to those volunteers that assist with national sporting governing sports in Bermuda. As for the politics of your meeting, that was not my remit. I do have meetings coming up with a few sports that are not national sports governing bodies to explain further the criteria of the national sports governing, to explain why this Department of Sport has those criteria in place and to assist them to becoming better positioned to be recognized as legitimate national sports governing bodies in Bermuda. So when you talk about votes and who got to vote, who didn't, I'm way too fresh in this role to actually get into the politics of outside organizations. But I can tell you that it is something that I'm very much interested in learning more about and assisting in getting more people recognized to represent Bermuda worldwide.
Right. Next question is the National Sports Center, the upgrade of the facility, the solar facility. How are we on time? Are we behind? What's the program with that?
The National Sports Center Energy Project is progressing quite nicely, and someone from the ministry will be reaching out to you shortly because within the next week, I will actually be on site. You would know that I was the former chair of the National Sports Center, so that is something that I'm very much aware of, and it is progressing. You've seen videos going around. As far as being on time, considering all that we've had to go through the last couple of years, I am pleased with the progress. And more importantly, once we do have that press conference, I think all of Bermuda will be pleased with the savings that we are seeing already with some of the remediations that have been done.
That's it for me.
Okay, next up is Jonathan Bauer from the Royal Gazette.
Good to see you, Minister. Thanks for having us. Yeah, okay. I wanted to start with this one. So you've taken over about a month after your department produced a 5-year policy with the aim of improving sports facilities, increasing participation. Are you committed to pushing this through as it stands, or will you be wanting to put your own stamp on things?
I'm glad you asked that question, Jonathan, because when I came in, I did have in my first meeting with the permanent secretary as well as some of the officers, I said, well, which one of these is a priority for us? And I can tell you that, not to preempt a ministerial statement that will be coming in the next few weeks, at least one of those goals will be progressed before the end of this year. And I'm sure many of the public, especially national sports governing bodies, will be pleased to see that I am about action. I am about doing things where the community can be proud of the National Sports Center as well as the sporting bodies that we have in Bermuda.
You mentioned it. It's my second one for you. You mentioned at least one goal. Since taking over, have you identified a top of the list in terms of what your priorities are, top 3, for example?
I
top
don't
5?
think that my priorities should be the top of anyone's list. I've spoken to many of the managers of the departments. I'm getting around to speaking to many of the sports. I mean, it was a wonderful event that I went to on Saturday night, Women on Formation. And at that event, there were many different individuals and I would say board members from many different sports. And everyone believes that their priorities should be at the top of the list. So we'll sit down and we'll see how we can afford assistance to the most individuals with, the budgets and everything else that we have in mind. But I don't think my list of priorities should be the focus. It's the list of priorities that are good for Bermuda.
Okay. You've mentioned that in the last few weeks you've met with governing bodies. I guess when can we expect to hear some of the details, the mechanisms that are being put in place to achieve these goals with the new sports policy?
In the next few weeks, you will
Next
see a
few
few
weeks.
ministerial statements that will be made, and you will see how we are progressing and how we intend to start to putting those in place. But, with a policy of that, I mean, we're not going to do everything overnight.
I got you.
But there is a clear plan, I can assure you that.
Number 4 from me would be Minister Peets revealed that some discussions would take place regarding the launch of a lottery initiative in order to boost the proposed national sports strategy policy. The policy, it's aimed at replicating Florida Duffy's historic gold medal success, a greater investment pumped into athletes. Open-endedly, is this something you support, and are you moving it forward?
Well, I have not been briefed on that strategic initiative yet, but anything, if we can go out and partner with individuals to assist our top athletes or all athletes in Bermuda, I think it's a good thing. So it'll be, I guess, a little premature for me to speak on specific strategies and initiatives of which you speak about, but I can tell you that anything that is going to take place to increase the involvement of top athletes in Bermuda, I am all for that.
Is it possible to tease out if that's going to be one of the ones that we're going to be hearing about soon?
You stand by and I'll let you know.
Yes, good afternoon, Ciola Wilson, Bermuda Real. Mr. Darrell, congratulations on your appointment. I noticed you stated that you're not too hip on the political side, but hard on the heels of your appointment. There was much talk in social media circles that you were fast-tracked to become a non-elected cabinet minister as part of David Burch's friends and family clique. What do you say?
Well, as I would say to you, Ms. Wilson, in social circles that I have all the time, I find that assertion to be rather offensive because what it does, it tends to disregard and disrespect all of the work that I have done over my career before I became into politics, and it also takes away the hard work that I have done in supporting the role that I've had. And if it is the desire of the leader of the Progressive Labour Party and the Premier through constitutional rights to appoint me as the leader of the Senate, that would be a discussion I think you should have with him.
And you've been in politics for how long now?
Well, as I said on a previous interview, there are two different forms of politics, as you would know. There's backroom.
Involved in the Senate since when?
I was appointed to the Senate in 2020.
So in 2 years, you're a minister. Will you admit that's pretty fast?
No, because if you would know, Ms. Wilson, the previous minister had no previous political experience, and he also was appointed to the Senate as
So
cabinet
now we
leader.
have two of you? Your department made history during this transition. Any comment on the fact that the first female director was appointed?
Absolutely. I did meet with Ms. Kim Sharice Bean this morning, and we have seen that the ministry did put out a statement, I think on Monday, when she did assume her role. She's been acting for a few months now. She's been at that department in different roles for a few years, and I am pleased to see that not just because she's a female, but because of her work ethic, she has been appointed as the director of youth and sport. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Darrell. We now have questions for Minister Burch. Minister?
That panel was there.
Good afternoon, Minister. Gary Foster Skelton from Bermuda Broadcasting. Now, speaking about the merger of WEDCO and BLDC, the merger will reduce operating costs and increase operating efficiency, according to the throne speech. WEDCO, the capital grant for 22-23 was nearly $2 million. It's hard to determine what other parts of the budget are made up by WEDCO and BLDC. So if this is going to reduce the costs, what are the costs now for the two Quangos, and what are the projected costs after the merger?
I certainly don't have those figures set off the top of my head. But let's start with, you now have one CEO versus two, one CFO versus two. You have an entity that has resources in the West that are taking care of properties that belong to BLDC now and have belonged to them since they started. So there are a number of areas where there will be savings, not the least of which is having to send a landscaping crew from St. David's to cut the grass at Daniel's Head. They now come from Dockyard. And so there are a number of areas where there can be some savings. There will only need to be one office. There will only need to be one set of accountants. One of the advantages of this amalgamation, well, first of all, this process has taken 20 years. And I won't comment on what I think about that. I think everybody knows what I think about how long it takes for things to do. But about 10 years ago, we were on this amalgamation page, and all three entities needed a new computer system. And so they had to get rid of purchasing the same system. And they affected some cost savings even in the last 10 years by amalgamating their resources and outreach to their companies so they have one contract as opposed to three. And they've utilize resources within the three organizations to effect some cost savings.
So going off what you said, going down to one CFO as opposed to two, one CEO, are we expecting there to be some job cuts during this period?
No, there will be no job cuts. We've given that undertaking. We have had a number of departures in the last 5 years that have not been replaced. And so we've looked at, you're on an amalgamation page, you don't just automatically replace people. And what you have now is, in the case of marketing, the marketing manager from Wedco has for the last 2 years carried out the marketing for BLDC as well.
Well, you did there being a review of BHC and BLDC. Therefore, there must be in that review some kind of ballpark figure of the kind of savings, money-wise, that government will make, and therefore the taxpayer.
There's not been that kind of research yet. Certainly what has happened is looking at the operations of all three entities, because this started off being an exercise of amalgamating three entities. The Housing Corporation was included in that as well, and you may recall that the CEO at Bermuda Housing Corporation acted as CEO at BLDC during this period. It's now the CEO of Wedco who's acting in that role. That sort of work has not yet been done in terms of detailed financial benefits. There are a number of reports that support the amalgamation of them, starting with Untangling the Quangos of 2005, and then the Sage Commission report of 2013. And so we've been on this page. And so our view is, if you can save $20, it's worth making the effort to do so. And that's the page that we're on.
Okay. Moving on to the affordable housing, I understand there's 100 plus on the wait list, on the waiting list for Bermuda Housing Corporation. 77 new units promised. Any change to how much it will cost government for these 77 new units in the next 3 years?
It's still $22 million, coming in 3 waves over the next 3 years. The first tranche of that, which is about $4.2 million, has been paid to the Housing Corporation. So they're actually on the road with the first phase of work that they are doing with that money. And the next tranche will come in the next financial year.
Okay. And when it comes to the water and sewage infrastructure master plan that's expected to be completed in March, work going on Parsons Road, is that fully paid for up until completion?
Okay, well, let me just say, Parsons Road is not a part of that master water plan.
My misunderstanding.
It will form a part of it, but it is in-house public works maintenance that is required because we're leaking all over the place. And so that is a separate project than the work that's being done in St. George. But it is work that is necessary. And I do want to make the point, because in reading and listening to the media, people are not going to be without water. It's a top-up service. So what that means is they have a water tank, and they purchase water from us, just like they do Watlington Waterworks, and it's a top-up service for their tanks. So they will not be cut off of water completely. They will still have access to water, and on the days when the pipes are turned back on, they can top up again. And so it's just causing people to be aware that the top-up service will not be available 7 days a week.
It's going to be intermittent over this period. So the provisions there, it's just be aware.
Yeah. The work that's being done in St. George's is in collaboration with both the town of St. George's and the Bermuda Land Development Corporation. And so what is happening is the main lines to St. George's are being replaced and are close to completion and looking to do commissioning. The same is happening at Southside. Southside is an old American base, and we have no clue where the pipes are. And they're leaking too. And so the requirement to replace that infrastructure is critical if you want to develop Southside any further. People are reluctant to go there because of the unreliability of water and sewage services.
Okay. And where in the phases does that come in?
Sorry?
South side.
Southside is part of this current
Of this
phase one, because what will happen is the affluent from St. George's will be pumped to Southside to be dealt with, and water from Southside will be pumped to St. George's to provide water to the people of St. George's.
Okay. My final question. You did tell media in August that some public works projects, upgrades to the Swing Bridge, Longbird Bridge, have the planning but no money. The throne speech did not offer much in the way of plans to grow revenue. Do you foresee any delays or pauses to any of these projects or other projects that are happening now due to lack of cash?
I don't see any delay in the current projects. The bridges that you mentioned, I see a continued delay. We've been asking for money for housing since 2017 and been told, obviously no, we're now being told yes. And so I do not see a challenge with the promises that we've made with housing because the funding is there already. And one of the advantages of having the Housing Corporation do these types of jobs is that because they're a Quango, they receive grant funding. And so unlike departments in government that have a budget, if at the end of fiscal year you haven't spent your budget, the Ministry of Finance takes it back. In the case of the Quangos, that money stays with them for the job that they've been given. And so I have a lot of confidence that we will meet our commitment because the first tranche of money has come, and people in the ministry will tell you that I asked every day that was there money in the bank, because that is the clear indicator that you can proceed. In fact, the Housing Corporation is completing some of the projects separate and apart from this that were part of the stimulus program of 2 years ago. The time frame in which they had to carry out the work extended beyond the financial year. And so they were able to retain the funds and carry on with the work 2 years later.
Thank you, Minister.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ben. I'll take questions from Jonathan Bow.
Thank you, Minister, and good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Some time back, you spoke on the savings that were out there of your intention of downsizing GP cars and the government fleet when the cars got retired. It looked like there was some savings to be found in there. It looked like there were at least 3 new Kia Soul cars, GP9, 14, 4 new.
Yeah.
You're ahead of me. Were they bought? They look like they're about to replace old GP cars. Now, I figured correct me if I'm wrong, but they retail at $49,500 each. I'm not a car person, but I did want to ask why smaller and less expensive cars didn't get bought for that.
They're electric, and we've indicated a desire to transition to electric vehicles. So we purchased 4 of them slightly more than a year ago, and we are doing the research on how they run, are they efficient, do they run out unreliably, and we will look to, in replacing the GP vehicles, replacing them with electric vehicles.
Got you. Number 2 for me, we spoke earlier this year about the whole road resurfacing. At the time, it was my understanding from yourself that government and Belco would be splitting the cost of the resurfacing 50-50. What it sounds like from Belco is they've not yet agreed on how much Belco will contribute. We've just been seeking to clarify it. I know some work has started on Fracture Street, parts of Harrington Sound. Just wanting to get what is the plan and the timeline for this work? Is there a ballpark on what the surfacing costs, how it gets paid for, and that whole resurfacing that's going to be happening?
You are correct that the permanent remediation of roadworks has begun on Harrington Sound Road. That was the first area where we done trenching. There is a requirement to leave the churches to settle for 6 months. We've gone a little longer than that in some cases, but there is funding in Public Works budget for road paving, and so a majority of that work will be paid for by the public purse. Half of the roadway will be paid for by I'm not sure why it would suggest that they are unaware when we have a written agreement. That is what the requirement is going forward, just for Belleville. But should there be an occasion for another utility to dig up the roads, instead of just filling in the trenches, their requirement will be to do that whole lane.
Okay, gotcha, sir. Yeah, the arbitration center, this one again. We had a lawyer saying that he called the International Arbitration Center, we had in mind overambitious, and that Bermuda could have become a hub using some modest office space. So number 3 for me would be, I guess, if there's a lot of empty office space out there, why wasn't existing office space considered for the project so we could already have it?
Well, let me just say that I would be the first person to admit to disappointment that the arbitration center has not materialized. But the reality is that you face challenges with any project, and we are committed to it. I'm aware of the negativity of some lawyers and others in the community about the state of the play. I don't deal with that. We would in a worse state if we had decided we didn't want embarrassment or have to answer these sort of questions, if we just barrel on ahead without taking the due diligence financially. We are still working those numbers. There are a number of challenges with it. I can tell you we will not agree to proceed until we're at a point where we comfortably can build a building, occupy the building, and pay for the building. And we're not there yet. So until we get to that stage, we'll take the criticism that the building hasn't been built. But what I will say is that the developer is still committed to the project. We still talk on a regular basis with the local consultant. And we will work through whatever challenges we have and make a decision. Clearly, the spot cannot remain vacant forever. There will be a solution. There will be a building on the site. I would like for it, the government would like for it to see it be the Ottawa Simmons Arbitration Center. Now, whether that becomes a reality is still a question. But we are committed to exploring that question to its satisfactory conclusion.
So given the Cayman and BVI have apparently already started their own arbitration centers, is there concern that we've been beaten on this one? Have we missed that particular boat?
The last part of your question? I don't.
Have they beaten us to it, basically, those other jurisdictions?
And your point is what?
Well, there can only be so much arbitration out there. Did they beat us to it?
They've been trying to beat us to international business. How they make out there?
Last one on the arbitration center, we were talking about this, and I might have gotten the wrong end of the stick on it. So you initially said that it wouldn't be costing the taxpayer, and then I'm pretty sure you said that we were potentially going to be putting other government departments in the building. Am I correct on that? And does that mean that taxpayers are going to be paying some of the rent on the arbitration center?
Do you really believe that a developer would build a building for the government for free? The plan was that the developer would pay for the construction of the building and be repaid via rent. And at the end of that period, the government would own the building.
Got you. Specifically, will there be other government departments on there?
Probably.
Yeah, okay. And it's not going to be a question of the developer taking the fees that people pay for arbitration, which must be fairly large sums to help cover the cost. It's just strictly rent?
Yeah.
All right, sir. Thank you. Look, I'm turning to Morgan's point on this one, where in the throne speech, they said that a new corporate entity would be created to oversee the completion of the whole thing. There was a reference that it would be along the lines of BLDC. Does that mean it's going to fall under your remit? And if that's so, can you tell us about how that's going to work?
I think I can't tell you how it's going to work. It's very much in the early stages. But what I can tell you is that I think it also said that it would be designed along the similar lines to BLDC. And by that, what that means is that I would be a 50% shareholder, as I am in BLDC, and the Minister of Finance would be a 50% shareholder, as he is in BLDC.
Got you. Last one from me, sir. It's Bermuda Beach Resort. Are we still on schedule to have the place open on June 1st?
That's the target date.
So that's all.
I say that like that because in every project that we currently have, there are supply chain challenges and delays and cost increases. And so before people start saying the PLP got it wrong again, the whole world's facing those challenges. As an example, we waited, I think, 6 months for furnishing for the show units that were due and have sat on a dock or various docks in the U.S. and just arrived last month. And so that has delayed us being able to provide opportunities for people who are interested in purchasing to see show units. And so we're putting them together now, and they should be ready in the next month or so.
Thank you, sir. That's all for me. Cheers.
Good afternoon, Colonel. Nice to see you. Long time no see. Interesting to see after being told I only have 4 questions. The other media get 5 and 6. Some things never change. Be that as it may. I know leading up to all this trench work, you said it would be about 4 years before road resurfacing really gets on a roll. In recent weeks, there's been a lot of noise regarding motorists, vehicles damaged extensively due to potholes, and the general disrepair of our roads. What's the latest on that? Because most people are saying you pay license and insurance, and part of that is for the repaving and upkeep of our roads, and our roads are atrocious. You say?
I say, first off, they need to slow down as a general rule of thought.
Sure.
You know the roads in a bad state, you're complaining about them, but you still drive like a bandit. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I believe that they would complain more if we didn't do the work. And Balco's ability to provide power to our homes failed, and there'd be another complaint. I did say it would take 4 years. I think we're in year 2 and a bit. We have started the permanent repaving on Harrington Sound Road. I drove on it last night so that when I came here today, I wasn't saying something that I had been told that might not have been correct. The challenges are that you have to leave the trenches to settle. And they're at the stage where they're doing that now, and we've started the repaving of roads. There is also there's a schedule. Annually you pave X amount of miles of road, and it's based on how long the time from the last time you pave it to now. I would say that most of the roads in Bermuda have expired that time frame. And so we are playing catch up in areas where there has not been trenching to try and get them paved, but it's only a certain amount of funding that we get annually to do road paving.
So for the motorists who got their radiator cracked, crashing into a pothole, is Colonel Burch going to pay him to fix his car?
No,
He's on his own.
he's on his own.
Okay, when you were first reappointed as Public Works, back in whenever it was, we did your first interview.
Yeah, I was an unelected senator.
Trevor and I, and you stated then you were considering things like making recycling mandatory, that if homeowners didn't cut their overhead brush overhanging brush, you were gonna charge them. Still no decision on recycling, but how's that working out? How much money did you charge people to go cut?
We did charge them. The threat of charging them got a lot
Shook
of people.
'em up?
Sorry?
The threat shook them up?
The threat shook them up, and got them to actually cut the hedges. It is still an area where we are greatly challenged, and we're greatly challenged for a number of reasons that don't affect private sector, private owners. This country is a strange country in the sense that you have people who complain about things, and then when you take steps to correct
They
them,
don't like it.
they have unintended consequences. As an example, the Ministry of Public Works used to import Roundup, which is now causing cancer and all sorts of other things, and we were banned by our other fellow from bringing it in for the last 5 years. And this is a primary reason why you see
So much.
on the sides of the roads. We
But
are
mind you, the
Sorry?
wife of the road keeping guy said that machine's been out of whack for
Yeah.
years too.
It has been out of work, and
So
yes,
even
and
if you did bring Roundup, you're not able to do the roads.
it would have helped.
Okay. The other thing is we did a feature on a young man that Public Works sent abroad to study with the people doing the bridges.
Yes.
Is he back? What's the latest with the bridges? Because I know money's an issue, but both of those bridges need to be done. What's the
Both of
latest?
those bridges need to be done. We do not have the money, and so there is no movement forward on it. Sadly, he left us,
Wow.
as have the engineers on that. You would expect that I got in trouble a few months ago saying we had just within the civil service. I still have that view. We have lost a number of engineers that we paid to train who have left the civil service for a variety of reasons, most of which have to do with the bureaucracy. In the sense, in his case, he is the first Bermudian, and his name is Richard Graham Ward. He is the first Bermudian to get a Canadian designation as an engineer, a UK designation as an engineer. And so it was a problem and for us in the ministry.
So where is he now?
He's at IPEC, which is owned by Belco, basically. And most of them are there. And we hire them now at double the cost we paid them. In his case, we could not get him beyond a trainee post until he served in it for 3 years. And in spite of making all the logical appeals and
Didn't happen.
recommendations that Dubai is outstanding, maybe you should do something a little different than bureaucracy normally react to.
Didn't
We
happen.
failed, and he left.
So-
And so I have the same.
Well, I'm well familiar with how long it takes and bureaucracy, but when your government, your colleagues say we want to encourage Bermudians to come back and work in their own country, that same bureaucracy is what keeps them away. So
Well, in this
What's-
case,
what's different?
In this case, they're still working in their own country, just not for us.
that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Burch. And Minister Darrell, that is the final question for today. I thank everyone for attending and have a great day.
Thanks.